board briefing meeting. Today is Thursday, June 18th, 2020. It is now approximately 10:05 a.m. So call this meeting to order. First off, we will begin with a roll call. I'll just go through the different areas and call and announce your name. And if you're present, please indicate. We'll start at the north end of the state. Bear River, Charles Holmgren, are you present?
Hey, Blain, he says he's having some hard time. He's going to try to call in. I don't know if we need to reach out to him or if he can call in. Marisa, will you try to do that also, maybe?
Is that Charles?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I will call him right now.
Thank you.
I'll call him on the phone real quick.
Thank you.
Okay, and then another little housekeeping item. If you're not speaking, if you could please mute your phone because background noise does carry through. So would appreciate it if you do that also. Okay, let's move to the Weber River. Kyle Stevens, are you present?
Here.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tennert, are you present?
Present.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson, are you present?
Present.
Green River, Randy Crozier, are you present?
Present.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson, are you present?
Present. I'm here.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon, are you present?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum with us. Charles Holmgren from the Bear River still trying to log in, but everyone on the board, with the exception of Charles, is present right now. This meeting it's a virtual meeting. It will be held in accordance with the governor of the state of Utah's COVID-19 pandemic and guidelines, and it's being held virtually. So with that, Director Adams, would you please identify members of staff and others who may be present?
Sure. Just hold on one second. Let's see if we can get Charles connected here. It looks like we're calling him.
Okay.
Charles, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Great. We'll get together after.
Okay, so Charles
Okay, so
Holmgren is
please-
present also.
Yes, and please remember, if you're on the telephone, star six to mute and unmute.
Okie doke.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, to go through other people that I see on the phone call, or at least on the internal component, is Jacqueline Pacheco, Joe Williams, Lindsay Russell, Marisa Egbert, Michael Christensen, and Carmen McDonald. Randy Staker, Russell Hadley, Shalane DiBernardi, Todd Stonley, Tom Cox, and that's myself. That's who's on. I will, we do have a YouTube channel out there, and so there are other people out in virtual land that could be on, but that's who's on this internal component.
Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, first item on our agenda for this briefing meeting is to discuss the board agenda items. So all of you should have received the agenda for today. First item on the agenda is...
Mr. Chairman, let me say I missed one name, and that was Candace Hassenjager. She is on the phone too. I apologize for missing you. Sorry, Candace.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is the minutes. Board members, have you had a chance to go through the minutes, and do you have any comments on them? One comment that I had was on page 4, and this would be of the minutes of the board meeting, which we held on May 14th. It has a table that says those present, and we had a board meeting and none of the board members were listed as being present. So I would suggest that we had everybody on the board was present at that meeting on May the 14th. So I would suggest that needs to be added to the minutes. that was my comment that I had on the minutes. Did anyone have any other corrections, additions, suggestions on the minutes?
This is Norman. I had a little comment on the briefing meeting, page 2. Under Muddy Creek, it talked about the sprinkler right in the middle of the page. It says it's a continuation project from 2018 project to pipe a ditch and bring it to a sprinkler system instead of, and I think we need to insert their flood irrigation. Instead
Okay.
of just irrigation.
Yeah, because sprinkler is also irrigation. It's just a different methodology.
Right.
Good. Okay, any other suggestions on the minutes? Okay, then we will go to the next item on our briefing agenda, on the agenda that will be for the annual meeting, rather, after the minutes are approved. And again, in the meeting, if you're going to make a motion or discussion, please identify who you are and that type of thing. We have two special items. The first one is RE 439, Porcupine Highline Canal Company, the authorization and committal, and that's in Charles area. Marissa is the project manager. And my understanding is that will not be heard today, but Charles, Marissa, if you'd like to discuss that.
And they're probably
It's not
both
being
muted
presented
now.
today because this is Marisa, and it's being discussed today because it's been an emergency they had with a slope failure just adjacent to their canal. And it happened just a few weeks ago. So we were hurrying up to try to help some things out. And then they said they wanted to hold off a little bit because of the amount estimate. They wanted to try to figure out some other options. They're talking with the NRCS. They're talking with the Division of Wildlife, which actually the slope itself, there's a wildlife management area through there. So there's still some discussions going on the canal to at least keep the water going. It's only a mile down from where the reservoir is. So they've been able to at least pipe that. There's still a lot of concern about the slope stability. They said they can cover their expenses for now, and if anything, they'll come back in August.
Okay, so this will not, there will be no action taken on this one today. And Marisa, you are cutting out pretty bad. Yeah, got about every third.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so there will be no motion on that today. The next project that is on there under special items is RE 060, RE 238, RE 311 on Hooper Irrigation Company to modify or repay. That's in Weber County. This is Kyle's area, and Russell Hadley is the project manager. Kyle, Russell.
This is Kyle. Certainly have a number of concerns with this discussion, and we'll ask Russell to kind of go over and give the background as to why this project and information is coming forward.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is addressing three separate projects, RE 060, RE 238, and RE 311 that the board committed funds for in 2003, 2008, and 2012. Construction started shortly after each committal. Okay, the purpose of the project was to install a lawn and garden system in the Hooper-Taylor area. We installed about 14 miles of pipe to replace existing earthen ditches, 2 regulating reservoirs and pump stations, pricey regulating reservoirs, and we're serving 1,586 homes total in the area, 1,259 in Hooper and 327 connections in Taylor. Okay, the projects, all three together, cost about $13,275,000. The board share was 85% of that, 11,284,000 about. And at that time, all right, well, the existing financing for each project was for RE 060, the original one. That was for the Hooper Reservoir, pump station, and 3 miles of pipe and hookups. And that required about $5,541,000 of board funds. Was to be returned at 3% interest, with payments for 25 years increasing 2.86% each year until the year 2032. Now, the reason it was 3% interest is because the affordability guidelines showed they were well below the affordability guidelines, so they had to pay kind of the maximum interest at the time, 3% interest. And the reason there was a 2.86% growth rate attached to the payments was that's how we were doing things back then. We were basing things on growth for the towns, and that 2.86 number came from the governor's Office of Planning and Budget. And okay, next project was RE 238. That was assistance for the Taylor Reservoir and pump station and 10 miles of pipe and hookups there. That cost about $5,475,000 of board funds. And that was returned at 1% interest with payments for 30 years, increasing 3.37% each year until 2039. The reason that was at 1% interest was because we had brought them up to the affordability guideline on the previous project. So they got a good deal on the second one at 1% interest. And it was out of the C&D fund. So they got that at 1%. And again, there was a 3.37% growth rate on that because it was just a different number the governor's office was using. So they had to have a little higher growth rate on that one. Okay, and the final project, RE 311, was assistance to serve a Hooper Haven subdivision with about 4,600 feet of pipe. And that required about $267,000 of board funds. And that was returned at 4% interest with level payments for 20 years until 2030. The reason that was 4% interest, as I recall, it was Dennis Strong, our previous director, that wanted it to be 4% interest because it was specifically with developers. It was to fulfill an agreement they had made with developers that they didn't have enough money, I guess, to run the pipe at the time. So they had to come to the board to fulfill this agreement. And because it was really there were a few extra houses along that street that did get served, but it was primarily to serve one subdivision that already was selling houses at the time, and they had secondary pipes in the ground. And so anyway, it was decided that they were going to pay the maximum interest on that one. Okay, the existing payments, if you look on page 3, you'll see the stream of how the payment stream goes, and their total payments for 2020 will be $533,000, and it gets up to, in 2031, their highest payment will be about $717,500, and then they start decreasing. And the current principal balance for the 3 projects combined is about $8,656,000. Okay, and the financial feasibility. Based on the board's water service affordability guideline, Hooper and Taylor residents could afford to pay up to $82.76 a month for all water service. That's a weighted average between Hooper and Taylor. And Hooper and Taylor, the weighted average for culinary water between those two areas is $33.18 a month, with culinary water provided by Hooper Water Improvement District and Taylor West Weber Water Company. The applicant currently charges $408 a year or $34 a month for secondary lawn and garden water. Okay, as shown, based on 1,586 residential connections, the applicant is averaging $68.81 per connection per month right now for all their domestic water use. That puts them about $13.95 below the month, a month below the board's affordability guideline. We'll go through some more of this a little quicker now. It's a lot of issues you can look at because of that fact that they're below the board's guideline. Right now, the board's interest rate we're looking at on municipal projects is 2.08%. If the board had the principal balance voluntary agreements returned at 2.08% over 20 years, the resulting repayments would be $246,500, $276,200, and $10,900 for a total of $533,600. That is what staff is recommending, that repayment structure. The applicant states that their 2009 payment of $518,100 was nearly unaffordable. Okay, when staff looked at their financial statements, we could see that it showed their profit was $403,000. That's excluding depreciation. It does indeed show that that's their profit. But apparently found out yesterday, there's something else going on there. This company is actually two separate companies. One company serves agricultural water. We'll call that A shares. The other company, we'll call those B shares, serves lawn and garden water. They keep the bookkeeping separate. They have separate bank accounts. They aren't even connected to each other. They're separate shares. They pay their assessments different times of the year. And but when it comes to their taxing, they have to combine them into one spreadsheet into their financial statements. And I did not know that. And so it made it look like they were a lot more profitable than they are. They've also got some accounting problems their CPA is trying to figure out. And as of yesterday, we really don't know how much profit were making in 2019. So it's a little up in the air. We do know they were profitable because the lowest their bank account got was down to $40,000. But it's a little bit of an issue to figure out by today for their accountant what their profit was for last year. Anyway, the company didn't like that it was showing that their profit was $403,000. So I want to make that clear to you. Apparently that was a mistake saying that. And
hang on, Russell, can I just insert
Sure.
just for a sec? Mm-hmm. So I just want to make it clear, the board's affordability, those calculations that Russell made, is not based on what profit they say they have or that we can even see on the books. The affordability is according to this guideline of what they can pay for water, what their median adjusted gross income was. So even though that number of $403,000 might be inaccurate, the calculations aren't really. We still show they're below the affordability guideline. So I just want to make that clear. We don't know exactly what their profit was last year, but it doesn't really matter in making the calculations for you. So.
Yeah, I was about to make that point on this next issue about, we also stated that they have about 200 more connections lined up. They're going to be subdivisions. They're going to be developed. They do have 200 connections on board. Well, they did as of last week. Apparently, because of the economy now, they had one subdivision of 30 homes pull out completely. So they've lost those. And apparently, some of those connections that are on their board, planned to be built, have been on there for years. Contractors that have just kind of on standby for when they're going to construct the thing. So we don't know exactly when those remaining 170 connections, when those will be constructed. And really, the reason of mentioning their profit and the additional connections are on hold was really just to show that they are profitable and they are growing. They are adding on connections as they go along. Okay, so to get to the proposed repayment, if the board agrees to change the repayment term, staff recommends the board amend each agreement to state the balance owed will be purchased at 2.08% interest over 20 years. And that is actually gives you payments of the $533,600. Now, there's also another issue about they've accrued some late fees. We didn't include this in the motion originally. And I guess as of yesterday, it was decided maybe this should be in the motion. They've accrued late fees for last year, getting their checks to us months late, of $68,152.78. And they would like to have the board waive those late fees. So at the end of the motion, if we could add on and waive.
Hang on, stop, Russell, stop. This is if the board chooses. And the other item, go ahead and talk about first what they're actually going to request, because they are going to be here and they are going to ask you for different terms. They have reasons they will lay out for you, and they will ask for different terms, and they will ask you to waive the late fee. So go ahead and talk about that, please.
We'll get that. Okay. Now we'll move on to the applicant's request. What it is they've requested. Okay, now they're requesting the repayment terms be changed for all three projects. Because the large and increasing payments are becoming difficult to make, and the projected growth rates used to calculate the increased payments never occurred. They're still below those growth rates that were projected, which is why we stopped doing those sort of things. People weren't keeping up with those growth rates. All right, they were requesting the combined principal balance be returned over 25 years at 1% interest, with level payments that total approximately $393,000. That lower steady repayment would help them out. They're going to explain. They have a lot of reasons they would like to get the lower payments. Now, we talked to them quite a bit yesterday and explained to them they don't qualify for the 1% interest. Obviously, the board can do what they want and give 1% interest, but we don't see any reason the board would go back down to a 1% interest. They should be looking at a 2.08% interest, which is the current standard for municipal projects, for municipal water. So they're wondering if they could get 25 years at the 2.08, which would have payments of $447,700. So that is what they're actually going to make their official request for. Because we told them they'd have a lot better chance of getting that than the 1% interest. They're free to ask for whatever they want. And we also instructed them to ask for the late charges to be waived. And again, if the board chooses to waive the late fees, we could just add on a line to the existing motion to say, and waive the late charges that have accrued. And that is staff's report.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yes.
Kyle. I have a number of questions to ask relative to that. The first one was going to be, have the growth projections been realized? And you kind of answered that question. that they have not, based on the actions the board was taking previously when they were approving loans back then. But next question would be, what are they current with their payment status as of right now, except for the late fee?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Okay. And then the next question is, when was the last time that they raised any of their water rates?
Oh, boy. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So that's a question we'll ask them, because based on the calculations that you've given us, they can afford to pay up to $82.76, but they're currently only paying $68.81. So there is some flexibility there. If they haven't asked for increased rates in a number of years, then I think that's something that they should be willing to consider. I think those were the questions I had right at this time.
And one other thing I can tell you, looking up growth rates and looking up things since the last census, it looks like they'd grown, Hooper anyway, had grown at 2.59%. So it was lower than both those growth rates. And Taylor is unincorporated, so there's really wasn't much, couldn't find much info on Taylor. So don't know how Taylor's grown.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a couple questions? Or I guess first of all, like I'm kind of uncomfortable with this. I want to be reasonable given the economic situation we are, but I'll just say that I'm uncomfortable with this. But we'll follow kind of Kyle's lead. How we're going to talk about the hardship policy a little later. Would that be something they potentially could, rather than doing all of this, if they really feel that their payments right now are unaffordable, would they be eligible for the hardship policy that would take them through, I don't know what it would be, another 6 months or whatever, a year?
Right, and that is something that we actually discussed with them yesterday. The COVID-19 policy that we're going to present and I expect you to adopt today. We mentioned that to them. They're not sure how much of that is really an issue. I mean, they said part of it, yes, developers aren't moving as quickly, partly because of that. They had plans and now they're not. So they think that might be a request they might want to make in the future. But right now, their biggest concern is just these growing payments. Every year, the payments get bigger and bigger and bigger. And while they're able to make them now, they can look at that schedule and see that, what is it in a few years, almost $700,000 9 years from now. That's a really, really big payment for a company. And they said, could we just level that out so that we at least know what it's going to be every year and can plan for that, and then have this extra cushion of our own money that we can do additional projects, that we can start installing secondary meters. I mean, they'll lay out these reasons for you during the board meeting, but that's some of what, they'd like to have a little more money on hand of their own, rather than just having every bit that comes in committed to paying us. So I know the restructuring and we're not a bank. And so this is kind of weird to consider almost a refinance. But at the same time, when circumstances change significantly and these growth rates, I mean, like Russell said, we don't use growth rates in figuring repayments anymore because it's just not reasonable to do so. So I think we were comfortable, and when they realized, the 2.08% wasn't exactly the one they were hoping for, but to just get a level payment and something that they can plan for year to year to year, I think they consider very helpful. So,
yeah, that does seem reasonable. How many? I mean, just offhand, kind of just in terms of magnitude, how many other projects are out there right now with these escalating payments? Did you mention that? Or just like generally, I mean, just like either a handful or?
Yeah, I don't think there are too many right now. We have a few, but I think Hooper probably came on towards the tail end of us doing that. So I don't think there are too many out there, and most of them that do exist haven't really complained.
Okay.
I think some of them might have done additional projects with us, that then we structured their payments on the new ones to kind of accommodate those existing growing repayments. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And
So I
then-
don't expect this to come a lot. It's just,
Yeah.
I think because Hooper owes us so much.
Well, and then I mean, we're not talking about huge numbers like in the grand scheme of things, but just given that sales tax earmark is probably going to be lower than anticipated, we're likely going to have this hardship program available. Is this going to get us into trouble? Not get us into trouble, but does this make you nervous about the balance sheet at all? Doing something like this?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't me. I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that.
Thank you.
So this is Tom Cox. I know Davis Weber has a number of projects with us that do have those increasing payments. And one other thing I'm concerned about is that if we change the interest rate on previous projects based on today's interest rate, Davis Weber is going to be on the board meeting in August asking for a change in their payments that range from 5%. I think they just down to like 2.5%. They just paid one off that was 7.5%. So I'm sure, I don't know if you ought to be concerned about that or not.
Valid point, Tom. That is a valid point.
This is Russell. The biggest concern to me was to get rid of that growth rate. When they approached me about this, that was the one thing I told them we have done and could do, get rid of that growth rate. We weren't sure that during the first discussion how we were going to handle their interest rates they agreed to. So we've kind of winged it.
And Tom, I will point out that on one of these projects, their existing rate is 1%. And because they asked for a consistent terms for all of their projects, that 1% will go up to 2.08. If what we're discussing here is what's approved, the 1% will go up to 2.08 and their 3% will go down to 2.08. So, I mean, I know the 4%, that's a small project, so I don't think that's greatly significant. But the biggest one is currently at 1%. There's that.
This is Kyle again. What is staff's feelings relative to the request that they're perhaps going to come in with of changing the repayment time from 20 to 25 years?
Well, they want to install meters on the whole system. That's one reason. They've got some good reasons why they would like to have some real wiggle room here. Their engineer, Greg Siegmiller, is going to address these issues. Okay, the meters, they want to have the ability to run pipelines on their own without coming to the board so they can continue growing and adding new customers. And just some of these, their payments, when it gets up to $700,000, that would they would have to be raising their rates every 5 years or so to be making those payments. They're just nervous about these increasing payments when they're not growing as fast as the growth rates were supposed to be. So,
And Kyle, so I ran the numbers yesterday, and the difference in a 25-year repayment. So Russell gave you the totals, the repayments and the totals. But if we stick with 2.08%, at 20 years, the combined repayment is $533,600. At 25, it's $447,700. So that's $85,900 a year that they would have to work on their own system without having to come back to you for secondary meters or something like that. So they would be able to build more of their own projects with that $85,900 a year. That's why they would much prefer the 25 years to the 20. And I don't think we're necessarily against that. We understand why they would want it. We just went with the guidelines that say 20 is plenty. So.
Right. I think this is Todd, and I think the thing to say is the 20 years at the 2.08% and a repayment of $533,600 is based on your board guidelines, and so that's what we followed.
Mr. Chairman, this is Randy. Can I interject?
Please.
As I've looked at this a little bit, if we went to the 20-year repayment, we're talking going from $717,000 at their highest repayment point down to $533,600 with a set value on each and every one of those years. So, I mean, you're talking almost $190,000 difference as far as repayment in those high years. And I struggle with someone saying, well, we're just going to give us more flexibility to do projects on their own. No, they're going to be back asking for help on meters, because if you can get 1% money for meters, they're going to be back. Or if there's grants that's available. I hate setting the precedents and dropping to 25 years and going clear away from our board guidelines. I think if we go to the 20 years, I think we're being very kind going to the 20 years, because there's lots of loans out there, and we don't want every loan coming back and asking for a change. Even this sets a new precedence, in my opinion. So I'm nervous about going any more than what our guidelines are personally, and that's I mean, every board member can make their own decision, and I respect that. But my personal opinion is I believe if we go to the 20 years, we're being very kind. Maybe I'm a hard nose, but that just, anyway, that's my opinion for what it's worth.
Thank you, Randy.
No, Randy, and this is Shalane, and I think you're absolutely right. And this is why anytime anyone asks us for something like this, we always tell them the board can do what they want. We make no guarantees. We make no promises. The board will make their decision. So we understand that is in your court. And I just want to clarify, when you talk about setting precedent, maybe you haven't been on the board long enough to do this before, but it's happened pretty regularly.
And I realize that, and I know we've made changes over the years, but but on the same hand, I know a lot of entities that come and get funding, and they pay according to what they agreed to,
right?
And they never come back and ask.
Right. Nope, absolutely.
So those that are good and stick to their agreement gets punished, and the other guy comes back and gets forgiveness, and I struggle with that personally. So anyway, that's my 2 bits.
Okay, other board members, what input do you have?
This is Blain. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Randy, not necessarily exactly like he said, but they're going to come to us and want us to forgive them their late fees and that type of thing. That's the thing that gives me the heartburn, is they get themselves in trouble and then they come and want us to bail them out on that type of thing. I would feel better about going 25 years and adding those late fees to the balance, so that at some point in time that they do have to pay those late fees, and rather than just forgive them.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Any other board members?
I'm not.
Blain?
This is Russell. Can I address one issue from Randy there? We did have a discussion yesterday about the meter program, our 1% loan and 85% cost sharing on meters. They did know about that. They're very interested in that. But putting in meters is a long-term goal of theirs. But yeah, I think they would like to come back at some point and get some meter money from us, and that's kind of what it's there for. And when it comes to the 20 years and those payments of $533,600, they're very thankful for that offer. They are happy that we are willing to help them out in any way they can get, but they're just asking for a little bit something a little bit better. But if the board keeps it 20 years, they will be happy with that.
Well,
Okay.
if I was in their shoes with their repayments, I would be thrilled at the 20 years personally.
So I still have the question that Kyle raised. When was the last time that they asked for a rate increase, and what is the issue that they're not asked to cover these things? What if it's been a while? Why have they not asked for a rate increase?
This is Russell. If you'd like, I can call up their secretary right now and mute myself and ask her when was the last time they did it.
I would appreciate knowing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be good information to have going into the board meeting so that we don't have to work on the fly if we have that information ahead of time.
Okay. I'll get on the line right now and see what she's got to say about it.
For example, if they raise their rates $5, I mean, that would give them a wiggle room to be able to make their payments and also be able to do things in the future.
Yeah, I look at the $85,000 or $87,000 a year. That's the difference between the 20 and 25 years. They're not going to put in very many secondary meters or other projects for that type of money. Seems to me.
No, I mean, there's got to be, if they're going to do things on their own, they're going to have to do some rate increases, and the affordability index shows that there is the ability to do some of those things. So, and maybe if we went with the 20 years and forgave them the $68,000, I could live with that. But I mean, to me, they're getting a great benefit if we go to what staff has recommended.
Okay, other board members, what's your feelings?
Blain, this is Charles. I feel like I kind of agree with Wayne's assessment on this, and with the fact that they can raise their assessments based on the Magi, and I think they need to do that. I feel comfortable with Wayne's suggestion of financing their late fee and possibly going 20 years, maybe, or 25 years. So I've got an applicant that's going to come to us and ask for an additional 10 years on their payback, but they're completely agricultural, and the way the ag economy, the price of hay and stuff like that's dropped enough that they're really going to have a tough time making their payments, whereas these are residential hookups, and I don't think they have quite the problems that a dairyman in Cache Valley does.
Okay, Charles, is that today or is that a future meeting you're talking about?
They have not contacted me yet. Russell sent me an email last night about 8:30 about this suggestion from West Cache Canal Company. They haven't contacted me yet, and they want to go out 35 years on their loan that we didn't let them go out far enough. I think their cost-benefit ratio, they were overly optimistic when they made the application, and that now they've painted themselves into a corner that they can't afford to make the payments with.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've heard from most of the board members. Norman or Jim, do you have any feedback on this?
This is Norman. I do have a little bit of a question, I guess. I'm kind of a hard nose. I'm kind of the opinion that they made the agreement to take the loans the way they did. They should stick with it. That's just my feelings.
Okay.
Okay, I am open to suggestions, and I would even say that this company's payments are due September 1st of every year. If you all are not super, oh, Russell just put in the chat that they raised their rates the last time 6 years ago, it looks like. So I would just add, if you would prefer to table this for today and have us explore other options, or if, I don't know, I'm hearing a lot of differing opinions. Nobody's super happy with what's been proposed or what they plan to request. If you have other ideas for us, if you want us to go calculate the repayments, leaving the interest rates the same for each project and just maybe extending the years a little bit, or, you know, leveling it out. If you'd like us to make changes to what we've presented, we can do that. If you want us to wait and come back to you in August with something different, we can do that. We are simply here to serve you and our applicants. And while you're right, Norman, they absolutely did sign these agreements and agree to the terms. Things are definitely different than they were when they were signed. So I know you're not a bank. We don't necessarily refinance, but we can do what you would like to do. So if whatever you want to do with this today, or possibly wait until August, we are open to your suggestions.
Okay, thank you. Jim, I want to hear from you. What's your thoughts?
Well, I've got a little bit mixed in there with all of them, actually, but I would think that maybe it'd be good, excuse me, be good to table it and get more information and see on the late fees, how many years of late fees is that, or is that just 1 year that they owe?
1 year.
Okay. So it's just 1 year they've been late. The rest they've been on time?
No, that's not accurate. They've been late several times. And this is where it gets interesting. So as Russell mentioned, they treat themselves as kind of two companies, even though they're really only one. They keep their accounts separate, but sometimes what they do is they simply, because of when payments come in, they will borrow from the agriculture side to make their payments to you. And apparently last year when they thought they did that, or whatever they did, they sent their check in for $518,000 and the check bounced. And they hadn't caught that until their accountant came back and talked to them later. So yes, they've been late before, and we have waived late fees before. They haven't all been their fault. There have been issues with the State Division of Finance that their system wasn't actually generating statements to send to the company. So because the company has an increasing rate every year, they didn't know their exact totals they owed, and so they didn't send them in. And so then they were late. So we waived those late fees because we looked at it as it's more of the state's fault than theirs. I mean, yes, they knew they had an agreement. Yes, they knew they owed us money. But if they didn't receive a statement in mail, they weren't exactly sure what that was. So no, this is not new. Hoopers had issues in the past, and we have waived late fees without coming to you before because the problems never got to this magnitude. But at this point, since they submitted an official request to modify their repayment schedules, we said, well, we're not waiving the late fees. We'll let that be your decision.
Shalane, Mr. Carrot, may I? I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, just really quick, it just reminded me, Shalane, when you mentioned the accounting and the accountant, at the beginning in the presentation, there was a couple of comments about the accountant still hasn't really been able to work out some of the data points from the finances. So, I mean, that might in and of itself be a reason to table, but excuse me. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to jump in like that.
Thank you. I had just a question on 68,000. To me, seems like quite a lot for a late fee. How does that stack up to normal late fees?
That is a lot for a late fee. The reason it's so big is because of the size of their payments and how late they were this year. They thought, as I stated before, their payments due September 1st. They thought they had made their payments November 12th, so they were already late. And that's the check that bounced. And they didn't actually reconcile and make their full payment until April 15th. So the late charges are actually approximately $36,000 on E060. E238, there are 28,500 approximately. And on the smallest one, E311, the late charges were about $3,500. So they didn't have the money in the right account when they tried to make their payment in November, and so the check bounced. So it's just, yeah, they have a secretary who doesn't really get all the accounting, which is why they actually have an accountant that they pay, but she doesn't necessarily differentiate, I don't think, between the ag and the irrigation or the lawn and garden. She just keeps track of their books and knows they have two separate accounts, but she's not necessarily keeping track of the two different entities they consider that they have. So it's almost just too many people and not one who actually knows all of it and can keep on top of everything. But
this is Wayne again. I don't understand how somebody cannot know that a check like that of that size bounced. How do you not know that a $500,000 payment bounced? I mean,
I don't know either.
This is Randy.
Kyle. Go ahead, Randy.
Go ahead, Randy.
I have one more.
I guess my thoughts is we ought to table this and let staff work with them and come back to us so we're all on the same page.
And this is Kyle. The more I've sat here and listened to the conversation and discussion that's taken place, I think there's a lot more questions than we have answers for right now. And I would not feel comfortable in making a motion, to approve anything based on the fact that we still have a lot of questions out there. And so I guess my question is a procedural one. How do we go about? Do we let them go ahead and make their presentation, and then at the end of the discussion, the action is to table for further information?
my suggestion, Kyle, this is Shalane, would be to actually table it before you listen to everything. Because if the information that you're going to gather is going to result in no decision anyway, if you've made the decision today that you think this should be tabled and more investigation should be done, I think you should table it when it comes up on the agenda. I don't think we need to have a long presentation from Russell added with the presentation from the company that then you're going to say, we're not prepared to make motion on this today. We think we need more information. I think you should table it with direction to the staff of what we should be looking for, what we should go out and find before we bring it back to you in August.
Director Todd, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a fine suggestion. You're the board. I will let you guys make that decision. It probably makes more sense to not listen and get a bunch of additional information if we're confused. I can see it both ways. So it's the will of the board.
And this is Russell.
Chairman. Okay.
Go ahead, Wayne.
This is Blain again. If we know that we're not prepared to go ahead and make a decision on this, rather than have them spend all their time and effort in trying to meet with us and so forth, could we just contact them and said, look, we're going to hold this off until August, rather than even having a conversation with them today?
Well, it seems to me, and it seems to me, and I may be wrong, but it's on the agenda. It's a public notice agenda, and if where they have the floor on the agenda, if they want to have the floor, they can have it. The decision is ours whether to table it or not. But to me, it seems like that the right approach would maybe be just contact them and see if they voluntarily want to hold off. But if they don't want to hold off, to me, we've already noticed this thing out and said it will be heard. And so I think we're obligated to hear it, is what it seems to me.
Well, and Russell just put a note up on the chat board that they were fully intending to be able to make their case, to us today. So again, I'm a little bit confused as to just exactly which direction we should take with that. What's their reaction going to be towards us as a board if we table it right up front and don't give them an opportunity to discuss it?
I don't think we as a board can on our own decide where we've already published it saying it's there. I don't think we can just say, we're not going to listen to it today. I think we need to contact them and let them know our concerns and say, you're welcome to come and present your case, but just so you're aware, we have lots of issues and concerns, and it's likely that we may not take action today, so the call is yours. To me, that seems like the approach we have to take. I may be wrong, but to me, that's what it seems like.
Blain,
I agree with that approach.
I would concur with that as well.
Yes, that sounds very reasonable, and I will send them all out an email when we're done here, notifying them that there have been a lot of questions and concerns. The board is willing to hear you out because you are on the agenda, but they may request more information that we cannot provide during this meeting, and they may not be prepared to make a decision. So if that sounds good to you, I will send that email out as soon as we are done here.
I would say that'd be the right approach. Anybody see it differently?
Mr. Chair, let me ask a question. Would we be better off to send an email or call them directly so they're aware right here, right now type of thing?
I would make a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
I
Russell.
only said email because they've had their engineer is the one who's put a lot of this information together for them. So by sending an email, I get it to the president, the secretary, and the engineer all at the same time. But yes, Russell can also call the company president directly, and I will send this email if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's do both.
Okay.
Okay. And
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is Jim. I have one more question.
Okay, and let's go back to protocol too, just like Jim did. If you want to speak, don't just jump in. Let's do this kind of organized. So, Jim, you've got the floor.
Okay, I'm just wondering if where this is split up into two groups, and part of it is agriculture, and it sounds like their payment, it has nothing to do with the timing of it, but if the payment was not due on September 1st, but due on November 1st or something, would that give them more time on their agricultural to raise money that we ought to consider? Maybe changing the payment time? Or are they going to be late no matter what we do?
Yeah, this is Shalane. I don't think that really affects it. They talk about sometimes borrowing money from the ag to pay for the secondary system, but then always paying it back. I'm actually pretty sure that the September 1st date is one they requested years ago. I think they had a different date and they requested September 1st. So I don't think that would affect things much at all.
Then it would be better to not muddy the water with that change of date then.
Correct.
I personally think let's just have staff, just like was suggested, make a phone call, send an email, explain that it's their call, but we have a lot of questions and it might be better for them to hold off until August. And that would be one thing that could be part of the August thing, but let's keep, it's complicated enough as it is, it seems to me, without adding that to a motion today or whatever.
Okay, this is Russell. Can I speak now?
Please.
Mr. Chair, permission to speak?
Please.
Okay, again, going back to their financial statements, the profit thing, the little mistake there, that really isn't important as to, it was just kind of mentioning that they are profitable, which they are. What level of profit they're making, it's their accountant can figure that out. They just can't figure it out today. And then the number of shares that connections are up and coming, that is going to change with what's going on with the economy now, but they are still growing. They've got people adding on all the time. And if it comes down to what they would accept, they would be happy with that 20 years and 533,600, just what staff suggested. And then when it comes to their late fees, that's the board's call on that. If nothing else, I know I would enjoy seeing them get a good tongue lashing about their late fees. And their secretary for the company is going to apologize very much about that. She's not a professional accountant. She's kind of acting as their office manager. She's only been on she's been on the job 6 years, but she messed up past couple of years. They had to transfer money from their savings account to their checking to get the check to clear, and apparently she didn't do it right. So I think they'd like to be heard today.
Well, that being the case, again, make a phone call and send emails. If they want to be heard, I would suggest that if we make a motion, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but the motion that I personally would feel comfortable is what staff has recommended. And that would include the late fees. So the 2.08 for 20 years and add the late fees into that, I think is what staff has proposed. And if they're comfortable with that, if they want to get this show on the road, we can do that without further ado, I would think. Kyle, what do you think?
Well, I kind of concur with that thought process, and I would feel comfortable, making that motion. I take my hat off to staff. I think they've, what little bit I've talked with Russell about in the past and what I've heard and listened to today, it sounds like you guys have jumped through hoop after hoop and trying to work with them, and I applaud your efforts for that. But back to what Russell has said, if they have given an indication that they're amenable to staff's recommendations and that we do in fact include the late penalty as a part of that and not forgive that, then I'm more inclined to lean in that direction than, what are we going to accomplish by tabling it other than having a lot of the questions answered. But at the end of the day, will we be right where we're at right now?
Well, make the phone calls, send the email, and Kyle, if they show up at the meeting, you'll be prepared to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, Okay, we've spent a lot of time on this. Let's move our briefing meeting along. We received 2 new applications. RE 440 from Nibley Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company. And it's yours, Charles and Russell. At this stage of the game, in the interest of time, let's just say that we received that application and we'll be looking at it in the future. RE 441 in the name of Provo City. It's Utah County. Wayne, that's yours. Tom has been assigned that. In the interest of time, let's say that application has been received also, and we will be looking at it down in the future. Next item that's on the main agenda for our board meeting is new policy adoptions. The first one is the COVID-19 payment deferral policy that we've all had a chance to look at. Board members, do any of you have any questions on this policy, on the COVID-19 emergency policy, the deferral? Any discussion from board members on this policy?
This is Kyle. My only comment there, it goes along with the one that I submitted when Shalane sent it out, and that was to put an approved by date on there, and I see that that's been accomplished, so I'm comfortable with it, with that information on there.
Okay, good, thanks. Anyone else on the board? Okay, we will need somebody to make a motion on that. Who would like to make a motion on that particular motion?
This is Kyle. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Okay, the next new policy adoption regards reducing the funds that have been committed when they end up not spending it all, and you've all had a chance to review that policy. Are there any questions that any of the board members may have on that policy? Okay, who's willing to make a motion on that policy?
I can make a motion, Mr. Chair, or second.
Okay, Juliet will make the motion. Okay, thank you.
And
okay.
This is Shalane. Blain, sorry, I'll be quick. I just wanted one clarification on that. This is not actually if they don't use all the money. This is like Blanding City came back to you for recommittal in May because the bids came in less. They didn't want to be obligated to the higher payment back to you or the full amount of the bond. Because what happens with the bond is if they don't take it all, then the extra just comes back to the board and pays off the end of the loan. It doesn't pay off, it doesn't reduce their annual payment. So this is so we as a staff will be allowed to make those changes still within the board's guidelines, but do it before we actually go to a bond closing. We can reduce that amount. And I just want to ask also, Blain, will you need me to do any presentation on this, or are you comfortable with it as it is and just making the motion?
I would like you, if you would, to just give a brief intro and background on both of those, just one at a time before we take our vote, if you would. And what you just gave as background on that would be something like that would be perfect. So
sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the main agenda for the meeting is the memorandum of agreement regarding the use of the power revenues from the project. So Scott, you're going to give some background on that. Scott, would you like to give us just a brief background on the purpose and need and that of the MOA?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm not sure what aspects to cover. I have a full presentation. You want me to just summarize the presentation, or?
Yeah. Just for this meeting we're in right now, just a brief overall wide brush overview.
All right. I won't bother pulling up slides then, but I will pull them up for myself to look at. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with this topic, so I'm going to try and keep it as high level as possible. And but so there is a little bit of background is the Colorado Storage Project Act had some requirements regarding the power revenues that are collected that complicate things a bit, and it makes it so that there is more revenues collected than are necessary to repay the participating projects from CRISPA. the act. And so this money, however, is not perceived as to be very accessible. It would only be meant for a new project that would have to be authorized by Congress. And this is the background that has led up to the MOA. And so they had a situation where all this money was being collected, and it wouldn't have been able to been used for anything, because it was unlikely that we would have gotten a new project approved through Congress. So ultimately, this over collection of money had an effect on the firm power rate that is charged to those customers that WAPA wholesales power to. And so these customers, which are organized through CREDA, the Colorado River Energy Distributors Association, and they proposed an option on how this could be addressed, and it could be possible to actually have money, but money that could be usable. And that was through the sharing of collection of revenues between the states, because part of the act says that you can't share revenues between states. The money has to be used in a particular state. If there is consent from that state, you can share your revenues with the other state, those power revenues, to pay off these projects. And so that'll allow them to share the revenue. If we entered into a memorandum of agreement between these entities, they could share these revenues, and then they could collect only what's necessary to repay these projects. And when they collect only what's necessary to repay these projects, that significantly reduces the amount of money that's collected through these power revenues. And so that also reduces the effect on the firm power rate that is charged to WAPA's customers. And this, so that was what was proposed by CREDA back in 2010. And that there was an agreement made we call it MOA 1, or the original MOA. And that was set to expire in 2025. And what happened was we were approached by all the Upper Basin states were approached by CREDA and WAPA to redo this agreement before the expiration of the current MOA. And with what their hope was to incorporate it into their power rate study, which WAPA's power rate study, which is something they do when it's seen as I don't really know what the process is, but there's something that triggers that, and it was going to be triggered soon. So they wanted to incorporate the MOA again into their new power rate, because what was happening was this MOA expired in 2025, but there were still projects to be paid back. So this over collection of money would have occurred again for the next I don't know exactly how many years it would have been, but it would have continued on till we paid off the rest of the project. So they wanted another agreement for us to share the revenue, so we don't over collect power revenues. And the way that power revenues are being shared is for the states, whatever was going to be over collected is part of that goes to the states, and that's the MOA dollars. And then part of that is to rate relief for the power customers. And so there was a negotiated percentage on how to split that between the two entities there. And so this new power rate study that they wanted to incorporate it into, so we could have WAPA could have assurance that it's going to be in there and that they can set their rate taking that into account, is part of the reason we're redoing this agreement. And also, this was an opportunity for the states to address some of the issues that had kind of developed over the years from the first agreement, that there's a lack of clarity on how the process, the detailed processes of dealing with the funds and how they were to be used to pay for participating projects. For Colorado had a lot of issues, and so did I think Colorado was mainly the one that had most issues, but there were several other issues in other states. Utah had very few issues, and so this money can only be used for reclamation facilities for it's not extraordinary, but elective O&M, and that's kind of a difficult thing to kind of determine sometimes, what exactly qualifies as that. And so Colorado's gotten in some difficulties going back and forth with reclamation on what qualifies as elective O&M. But we're hoping that this new agreement has clarified a lot of the issues that we've had in the past. And this money, this MOA money, has been used for several projects already in the state. The Olmsted power plant was funded in part by that. Blue Cut was one. Let me see what we have. Blue Cut Canal was a water right transfer. Is complicated. I don't really know a whole lot about that. The Steinecker Canal, and currently there's a Tyzac pumping plant in Red Fleet Reservoir. That's Uintah County Water Conservancy District. And there's also some Upper Basin projects too that we come together on. One of them is the Upper Basin Consumptive Use Study. I'm sorry if this is a little bit rambling. I'm trying to summarize this as best as I can, but those are the basic elements that are in the presentation. It'll be laid out in a much better fashion in the presentation. I was just trying to go over some of the background and details of it as much as I can. Let's see, some of the money that will be collected for all the Upper Basin states will be $245 million for the next 17 years, and that will equals to 14.4 million per year for all the Upper Basin states, and then Utah's allocation of that is 3.1 million per year. So it builds up as we go through the years of this agreement. And the total avoided over collection will be 323 million, and 58% of that is what is going to be allocated to the states, and then the rest of that is rate relief for the power customers. So I will pause there and see how many questions I generated or what confusion I generated.
Okay, board members, have any questions for Scott regarding it? It's a multi-page document. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to read the Memorandum of Understanding, and a lot of legalese in it and that type of thing. But I appreciate, Scott, you kind of summarizing it for us. To me, it looks like it's in Utah's best interest to extend this agreement, this Memorandum of Understanding out. But Danny, you have any questions you'd like to ask Scott or any clarification on this? Okay, there is a resolution that has been prepared, and that this resolution would be basically that the Utah Board of Water Resources hereby authorize its director to sign the second memorandum of agreement concerning the Upper Colorado River Basin Fund. So basically the resolution is that the board approve this memorandum of understanding and have our director Todd sign this agreement. Who would be willing to make a motion on that particular resolution?
Mr. Chairman, this is Norman. I'll be glad to do that.
Okay, Norman, you'll make a motion on the resolution then. Okay, thank you.
And Blain, this is Shalane again. I just wanted to state that Scott, is part of his slideshow, will have a slide that says staff recommends, and then a motion. The board approved the resolution or whatever it says, but he will have a recommended motion on a slide that you'll be able to see in front of you during his presentation.
Okay, so Norman, the verbiage, the language will be on the slideshow of the motion, what it should contain then.
Blain, this is Randy.
Go ahead.
I had a question for Scott. How does this affect the funds on the salinity control program, Scott?
This should have no. This money is a separate from the salinity portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on this memorandum, all that I received in my email was the first page. I don't know if anybody else got just the one page of the agreement. Anyway, that's all that I received if there's more than one page.
It's actually what I received in the email that was sent to all of us. The one I got and everybody was CC'd on it was 35 pages.
Yeah, it's quite the agreement there. It should be 30 something pages.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. The first page is the resolution of the board, and the next 30 something pages are the memorandum of agreement concerning the Colorado River Basin funds. So the first one is the MOU, and the next part is the final review draft dated June 10th, 2020. So
seems like it was two separate documents, wasn't it, Todd?
No, I believe it was. Was it?
Yes.
Okay.
One is the and one
I
is
just received one document.
Yeah. There's one document of the resolution and the second document of the memorandum of agreement final review draft. So
yeah, it was on June the 17th to date. Hurry and check my email here.
Yeah, no, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was two separate documents. Anyway, yeah.
And if I might add, I think you might have even got it. Oh no, you didn't. You just got it once from me. So Randy, I will forward that again to you so you can see the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, because I've looked on both those emails and all I've got is just the one page. So I was a little confused.
Yeah, the one is a PDF. The long form is a PDF file.
I still didn't receive it for some reason. So if you'll resend that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, the PDF is the long version, and the other is the actual resolution. The one, and you're listed on it, Randy. You should have it. It has two documents on it. What all of us received. So, but send it to Randy again anyway, if you would, Shalene, please. Okay, good. Let's move on to the next item, which is a planning report. We'll have a climate change water resource potential adaptation strategy in Utah by Krishna. We don't need to take time now to go over that right now, but we'll have that presentation in our board meeting. The next item would be the Lake Powell pipeline report, and Joel will be giving a presentation on that. And part of Joel's presentation that he will be giving, all of us should have received a draft comment letter on the environmental impact statement. Hopefully all of you received that and have looked at that. It's a statement, it's a letter that would be to Rick Baxter, the program manager for the Bureau of Reclamation, and it's essentially saying that the water resources and the Bureau of Reclamation and everybody has worked together on this, and that the Lake Powell pipeline project is good, and that we as board members are in support of this. And so there's a request that we approve this letter to Rick Baxter. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? Joel will give a presentation, but what we will be doing as a board, potentially taking action on, is approving this draft letter. Any comments or discussion on that? If not, we'll need somebody to give a motion to approve the comment letter on the draft environmental impact statement.
Mr. Chairman, I suppose that kind of falls under my category.
Okay, so Jim will give a motion on that. Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda for things is the Bear River Development Report, and Marissa is going to give us an update on the corridor preservation and right-of-way acquisition matters, that type of thing. Marissa, is there a condensed, shortened version that you could give us right now, or should we just wait for your presentation in the other meeting?
Can you hear me okay? Am I unmuted?
You're fine,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, just real quick, just so you know, it's really all we have right now. We've closed on one property. That's all. It's the detention basin. So we've only closed on one. That's the only one that is a public record right now. So that's the one that I'll bring up in the board meeting, just to let you know. And it was all of $29,400. So this is a good thing, showing that, you know, we're trying to stay ahead of development. And so I'll have a map and I'll show on that, and then I'll just give a little bit more update of where things are on other, you know, more in general, because it is real estate transactions. And so this one is public record, so I'll let you know about that. And this is to just let you know, keep the board in tune with that money that was committed for this right-of-way acquisition. You know, this property was just under 30,000. There's also been money spent on, you know, the surveying and the right-of-way agent, and those sorts of things that need to be done to even be able to get the property. Yeah, so I'll just do a quick overview even in the board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda, that will wrap up our main board meeting, other than our director will give a report in the meeting, and we'll look forward to that. Going back to our briefing meeting agenda, we're now down to item number 3, information to the board. And Director Todd, would you take over from here on what information you think we should go over?
Sure.
Please?
I can give a couple items. What I'd like to do first is have Joel just give a quick update on status of funds.
Okay.
And this will be really quick today. The fund balances are very similar to they were when we talked a month ago, where the revolving construction fund is looking a little bit tight, and we are trying to divert projects towards the C&D fund to allow that revolving fund to recover a little bit. The only money that comes into that revolving fund is the repayments that come in, so it does tend to grow a little bit more slowly than the C&D fund, which gets the sales tax money each year. So the C&D fund, it has a healthy balance. We do have some big projects applications coming in, the one from Provo City and American Fork, and so we've got some larger projects on the horizon, and some, but we do have capacity for those in the C&D fund. The City Water Loan Fund could handle another project there. But overall, the balances are good, and the board has the funds to address all the projects that we have on our radar right now. So that's a quick status of funds update.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Norm.
We asked last time that we make contact with some of those big projects, see if any of them wanted to cancel out. I wondered if that was done.
Yes, thanks for that reminder. Joel, Shalane, you want to help me with that one?
Maybe I'll go first and Shalane can fill in. I know that we are working on outreach to those. The response on some of them is that yes, they would like to continue to pursue that project. Some of them tend to be on timelines that aren't super speedy, but with many of them, they would, if they were to come back, if it's been, I think, longer than 6 years is the regulations, that they would have to do a reauthorization at that point anyway. I think there is still some outreach that needs to occur to get with all of them. Shalane, is that accurate?
That's accurate. Yeah. And I just have to apologize that that's one thing I haven't followed through on. Just hasn't been high on my priority list. But yeah, I'll get with the staff and have them contact their applicants and pursue that a little further. So I apologize.
Shalane's working 2 full-time jobs right now. When she became the project funding section manager, she also has retained all of her other duties because we haven't been able to replace her yet. So she's doing all the bonds and contracting for the entire office, and she has got a lot on her plate right now.
I can attest to that. Earlier this week, I received 4 contracts from Shalane that needed to review and signature and all that. She is busy.
Yes, and we recognize it, and we're thankful for Shalane and all the work that she's doing in 2 positions and those kind of things. We're hoping to get some help. As of right now, the legislature is meeting in, I believe, the 5th special session, looking at budgets and budget cuts and those kind of things. We did get to hear some things through executive appropriations yesterday. They are doing budget cuts somewhere between a couple percent as an average, but some agencies are getting hit harder and others are getting hit less. We are on the getting hit harder side. Looks like our operating budget cut will be cut in the neighborhood of 7 to 8% as of right now. So it's substantially bigger. We did submit a list. I think I told you last month that we were working on a list. We did submit a list of 2%, 5%, and 10% budget cuts. That included things like mill site desilting project because they're working on it. They won't be able to do that. We have some water resources expense travel that we put out. We're doing a lot of meetings like this, so we have some travel savings. I believe there was some water conservation rebate money that was put out. We also had a Logan River Monitoring Observatory that's passed through to USU to run some gauges, quantity and quality on the Logan River. And then, much to our surprise, our water education program budget, or at least a lot of it, was put out as a budget cut, and that has stuck. That will, it claims it will reduce. It essentially eliminates 1 position at the division. We are meeting right as we speak and talking about what we can do for that potential employee. We have a couple open positions, and we will work towards finding a position for that individual. So budget-wise, that's what we've got going. And like I said, they started meeting this morning at 9:30. And Jim Egbert, our financial manager, is listening in and giving me updates as we speak. So. One more item, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right. I believe at the last meeting, I asked if you had any, the board, had any meeting travel reimbursements. We are getting close to the end of our fiscal year. I believe Randy sent out an email reminding you of that this morning about, just before the meeting, for not only your travel reimbursements, your meeting per diems, as well as your, I would call it meeting stipends, but it's meeting per diems. And Randy's on the phone if you have any questions about that. But if you have some of those that you've been meeting with project sponsors, please get those submitted so we can get them in this fiscal year.
Todd, this is Kyle. I have a question on that. I appreciate Randy sending that information out to us, because that was a question that I had discussion yesterday with Blain. But I personally have not kept track of the hours for the virtual meetings, for the briefing and or the board meeting. And so if we fill out the form and send that in without the hours on there, I'm assuming staff could just fill that in for us.
We can do that. We know how long we've met. We've got that down. Randy will help us with that.
Thank you.
So I don't know about the rest of you. Something's going on with the audio and stuff right now. It's not coming through for me very well at all.
Did everybody hear that? The audio's not coming through for Blain. I don't know if that's a local internet issue or whatever. I've heard everything good so far. So got a couple thumbs up. Everything's sounding good here. So Blain, it might be an individual thing. So
yeah, it might be. Yeah.
And Shalane, this is Shalane. I was just going to say Blain actually cut out when he was speaking. So I guess it's your internet.
It's probably on my end. Okay.
So Mr. Chairman, that's a quick and dirty of what I've got for information to the board. In the director's report, I'll touch on the budget stuff again. We'll talk a little bit about COVID and our COVID response, as well as a couple other things that we've been working on. There's not a whole lot to report on, but we've been working on more than a few things.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Under other items, with this Lake Powell pipeline project, the change application was filed. There were 6 protests that were received by the Division of Water Rights on it. Our legal counsel received permission to consolidate the responses for those 6 protests into one response. Yesterday was the deadline for replying with our response. Legal counsel for Washington County Water Conservancy District and the Water Resources Legal Counsel prepared a response. I was given the opportunity to review it, and I know Todd was as well. I thought it was a very well written response. It was filed yesterday. I forwarded it around to you board members, and so anyway, that's the status of the change application. At some point in the future, the state engineer, Division of Water Rights, will schedule a hearing on this proposed change application. In the meantime, there's been a lot of publicity, largely from River Council and others, regarding the Lake Powell pipeline project and that type of thing, and been wondering if it would be a good idea for us as a board to authorize staff to prepare and develop perhaps a letter that could be published to the media on the change application on the Lake Powell pipeline project, and what the change application accomplishes, what it doesn't, what its intent is, that type of thing. I don't know, Director Todd, what are your thoughts on something like that, as far as if staff would be able to prepare or develop a letter for publication to the media?
If the board directs us to do that, we will definitely do that. And we've got the letter, assuming that it will be approved today on the comment draft of the EIS. We would be more than happy to prepare a letter to the editor or an opinion piece for you.
Would that be advisable, do you think? Would it be a good thing, or needed, or not? Or
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
I like the idea of it. I think it's good to, I don't know, I feel like there's sometimes speculation about why this process might be happening or misinformation. And so it might be nice for us to just, especially like in terms of clarification of just providing information. That might be a nice venue for us. I haven't really thought about it too much, but I don't know what I would put in it, but obviously staff would figure that out.
Yeah. That was kind of my thoughts exactly also, Juliet, on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Randy.
This is Randy. I just, would we be premature? Do we need to let this go through the state engineer's office and let them go through that process? I wouldn't want to see us do something that we were trying to influence the state engineer's decision. I just don't want us to be perceived as trying to influence their process.
Yeah, if we wait for their process to do, we won't be writing a letter for 4, 5, 6 years, would be my guess.
Well, that might be, but on the same hand, is it appropriate to let it go through through that state engineer's office at this point. You know, we've made our comments in writing to them, and I don't know, just a question I have.
Yeah, and it's a good question. It's a good question. Other thoughts, other board members?
This is Kyle. I kind of concur with what Randy just mentioned. Wouldn't want to get the cart before the horse or have the perception out there that we're trying to cause influence. Even though, you know, on one hand it'd be good to do it, but on the other hand, maybe it's better to just wait.
Okay. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Yes.
this is Blain. My thought is that, yeah, I think we need to proceed with prudence, but by the same token, there's a lot of misinformation being put out there by those opposed. I think that the truth needs to come out one way or another, and just to sit back and do nothing, I don't know if it's really beneficial or not, because somebody needs to stand up for the truth.
Okay. Charles or Norm or Jim, any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
I just had a question, and I kind of agree with what was said. You know, some guys would rather climb a tree to tell a lie than they would stand on the ground and tell the truth. But my question is, the stuff that went to the state engineer that opposed it, will this letter that the attorneys have written, which I thought was well written, will it go to the state engineer also, a copy of it?
Well, the one that went to the state engineer, that was a response to the protest. That's who it goes to. That's exactly who has that in his hand.
So that you sent us is what went to the state engineer then?
Yes.
I wasn't quite sure of that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, unless that is our additional comments would be a duplication, I feel like supporting the effort to move forward with Lake Powell Pipeline and stating that. So,
this is Norman.
Go ahead, Norm.
My opinion is that it would be good to let the world know where the board stands.
Okay. All good comments. It sounds like we've got some different views, all the same objective, perhaps different views. I don't know. What do you think, Director?
Mr. Chairman, we'll do what you ask. Maybe we would stay away from a piece that would talk about the water right per se, but talk about the support of the project in general, and we could stay away from that potential issue. I would have my comms teams help draft that letter. We could send it out to you, or with your permission or what have you, we'll do what you ask us to do.
Well, it sounds like Kyle and Randy have very good concerns about the water rights end of it and not wanting to upset that, put the cart before the horse, I believe you phrased it, Kyle. If it was done the way Director Todd just explained, not even mentioning the water rights, just talking about the Lake Powell Pipeline project in general, would that help reduce the concerns you might have on that, Randy or Kyle?
This is Kyle. I would be supportive of that approach, yes.
Randy? Is Randy still with us?
Blain, this is Randy. I certainly support, a letter of support and explaining, the project, as long as we don't muddy the water on the water rights.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Wayne.
I would suggest that maybe we have Todd and his staff draft a response, a letter, and present it to the board and let us take a look at it and see how we like it.
Okay. Would this require a formal board action on an agenda at our next meeting, or is this something we could just have you prepare something and if pass it around, if we're comfortable, just do it? Todd?
I believe we can take that direction and do that for you. I don't believe this needs a board action. Shalane, Joel, I'll refer to you on that.
Yes, I think you're right, Todd. I think that thinking is correct, especially where this, I mean, we all know the project is already a direction that the board is supposed to take. So yeah, support of the project isn't a problem, I don't think.
Okay, well, it sounds like, why don't Director Todd have your staff prepare a letter just in support of the Lake Powell Pipeline project. Be careful and omit any reference to any water rights or anything that could cause us problems of trying to have undue influence on the state engineer and that type of thing with the change application. But at the same time, I think it would be good to have a little explanation of where is the water coming from, how it would work a little bit. You know, they're not releasing flows to go down there, and you know, things like that. But not get into the specifics of the water rights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will work on that and do that. Maybe just a little bit further clarification, if it be the will of the board, that I could work directly with Chairman Blain to finalize that letter and prepare that letter, if that's all right with the board.
Well, and before I did the final approval, board, I would like to send it around and receive any input you might have also, just electronically. Anybody have any concerns with that approach? Okay, let's do that then. Any other items that we need to discuss in our briefing meeting this morning? Does anyone have anything that, in addition to what's been discussed, or any clarification or questions or on anything that we've done so far? I guess one question I had was, has contact been made with Hooper yet over the phone or anything yet? Have we received any feedback from them?
Yes, this is Shalane. I have emailed, and Russell spoke to their engineer and the president of the company, and it sounds like they are ready to proceed today.
So they will be in attendance and today, and hope for a resolution of their matter of their
right.
proposal. Okay.
It sounds like that's what they're ready for. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anything else then before we close this meeting?
Mr. Chairman, this is Todd again. Thank you so much for all of your service and everything that's on this. Our board meeting starts this afternoon at 1 o'clock, and would recommend that you all get on 10 or 15 minutes early so we can get through whatever technical difficulties that we all may be having. I believe it's the same link for you, and you're welcome to stay on if you would like, but if you hop off, please jump back on a little bit early so we can make sure we get through the technical difficulties before the 1 o'clock start time.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And I guess our public comment period electronically expires in 6 minutes. Randy, we'll be asking you individually on each different thing that is on the agenda if we've received any comments. But to this date, have we had any comments, Randy?
Randy had to jump off. He was here in the office. He was headed home to where he has a microphone and a camera.
Okay.
So I hadn't heard anything from him yet, but that was a while ago. So we'll check with him and see. So.
Okay, appreciate that. If we do have any, the statute says that any comments that were received before 12 o'clock, that board members will have the opportunity to review comments prior to the meeting. So if Randy gets any comments, have him hurry and email them to us if you would, please.
Will do. I'll call him right after we get off.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Charles Holmgren here. I received an email while we've been in meeting this morning from West Cache Irrigation making a request. They are not on the agenda, so I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know if Russell Hadley's had any time to look at their request, but they're complaining about bids coming in higher than normal. I don't know. We may just have to wait till next board meeting to deal with their issues.
Yeah, at this
Yes,
stage,
Charles.
we cannot
Yeah.
deal with it right now, can we? No, it's not.
No, if that's right. If they submitted an official request to you today, Charles, the appropriate time to address it is at the next board meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, our next meeting is at 1 o'clock. Log in early. Remember the same guidelines of everything. Once the meeting starts, everything is public record, whether it be in the comments that we may write or whether it be what we say, that type of thing. Keep our speakers or phones on mute until we speak. Make sure we identify ourselves. Just the normal protocol that we're pretty well getting used to at this stage of the game. Appreciate each of you and on the board and all of your efforts and all of staff's efforts. From my position I've got right now, I see not as much as Director Todd does, but I see a lot of efforts from staff, and I do thing.
Mr. Chairman.
We motion to dismiss this meeting, do we?
Mr. Chairman, you were breaking up, but thank you for the kind words for staff, and we will definitely let folks know. One last thing, I promise. Our next meeting is still planned for August 6th, and our October meeting is scheduled. That was the one to be in St. George. I've contacted the district down there. They're willing to still hold it if we can with the COVID component that's out there. They're also willing to do a virtual tour and do it that way if needed. So we'll continue to work and be involved with the district in St. George, and we'll let you know. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that, and we'll talk about COVID a little bit more, but the entire state for the most part is still in yellow. Right here in the office, we're still orange, and Kane County is now green. And so it's kind of hard to keep up on all of that too. So we'll continue to work through that and see where things go. But just a quick update on those potential board meetings. So. I can't hear the Mr. Chairman. Oh, we lost him.
You're there, Todd.
All right, the vice chair, because the chairman is we've lost him. Mr. Vice Chair, the meeting I guess turns to you.
Well then, we'll call for an adjournment. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'd make a motion we adjourn, Mr. Chairman. This is Jim Lemon.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. I don't think there's a vote required, is there?
No, I don't think there is a vote.
Then we will consider the meeting adjourned until 1 o'clock. And as they've indicated, let's get on early and make sure we get all of our technical issues worked out ahead of time.
Thank you all. We'll see you at 1.
Okay, bye-bye.